Let's take some audience questions, please. The best thing about the box mics is they can throw them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you can actually toss them across the room and someone can catch it and ask questions. Yeah, those are great. So the box mics, we use them quite often and we throw them around so that people can speak.
Am I? Oh wow.
Gobbling music.
Leah Melinda, School Church Foundation. So I work at a relatively small philanthropic foundation with lots of nonprofit organizations and other social impact organizations in Los Angeles. And oftentimes we think of the nonprofit sector as the recipient of funds, of knowledge, kind of what you're talking about, maybe the communities they serve receiving digital divide training. But I'm also hearing you speak to this knowledge gap in the way that bias is embedded in AI because those communities aren't feeding into the system. And I recognize that maybe by training them, to go on ChatGPT and be an input as a user.
Gemini.
Okay, sorry.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, because I work at a foundation, I'm very new to this, so I appreciate, I'm not even aware of all the tools. Obviously, I'm very aware of Gemini, shout out to Google. But I just say, in addition to getting them to be a user, which is a form of being an input, right, just by interacting with the tool, what sort of pipelines can we create to get those communities into spaces they wouldn't otherwise be in, to be feeding into these systems, co-create knowledge with your teams? Because there are nonprofits 1 mile away from here that could bring people in and be the perfect focus group.
Let's talk.
Great. That was my question. And if you have a broader answer for this audience as well, because I know a lot of us probably know folks that need to be training this technology.
I would say, Brian, if we can get all of the list of the different communities and foundations that might want to be part of this, I'll work with research to figure out how we get all that program going.
That would be great. I have one thing to add to there, just as in the meantime, while Caroline is solving world hunger, because she can, right? She's right, I'm here, she's here. I think another additional piece to this that I have been, Clem, who is the CEO of Hugging Face, but for the technical folks in the room, he is actually very adamant about the point of model diversity. And so I think the hunch that I have here is the more people who are in those underrepresented minorities that enter the stage, find the data, and give feedback to the system. And just to write on Caroline, right, I work for Google, so I should know this. If the product is free, you're the product, right? So let's be smart about this. However, if you are going to be proactive in that kind of training feedback loop that Caroline mentioned, that's at least on our tool, right? Gemini has that ability to not only do thumbs up, thumbs down, but edit drafts of the answer. So you can go in and submit net new data and or a rewrite that shows a totally different perspective, and by you participating in that tool, that's what we do internally at Google. Every day we're asked to stress test the tool and give feedback. Now at the same time, Google has a really interesting, when we did our Imagen presentation, our image-based team is focused on a very nuanced problem in India that they found in one of our models, which is when you ask the model to generate Indian food, it was generally producing images of westernized Indian food and not capturing the nuance that in northern India and southern India, there are differences between categorically what people eat on a day-to-day basis there. And so teams on the ground in India, in the form of either data annotators or people that are collected as part of our field feedback teams, which our language and translate teams do a lot of on-the-ground research with UX researchers, they had to dig into that problem because that was a really big problem for one of our largest underserved user bases is in India, right? So think of yourself as part of the system, right? The responsibility to give back that data in that way is almost like it's a circle. It's a perpetuating circle in a way that you can kind of give feedback with the minimum lift possible while you guys also simultaneously solve world hunger together, which is fantastic. Love it.
I have something to add to that as well, just very quickly. And I would say the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is there's a lot of working groups, steering committees that are being formed, but there are no communities at the table that are part of that co-creation process. And I would say that is my biggest issue, is that we engage the community after the fact. And we need to have intentionality and create more equitable spaces for communities to be a part of that conversation. And I also want to mention, to your question, that requires resources to ensure that we are providing all of the different resources and services to help communities come and be a part of that co-creation process. So for example, are we going to be able to provide transportation for community members? Many community members are not available during this time that we're even having this conversation. Are we able to create spaces where they can engage on weekends, during the evenings? Are we providing childcare? Are we compensating them for their time? So I think as we're beginning to include communities as part of this conversation, we cannot forget the equity piece. And there needs to be equity at the center, and ensuring that once they come here, there's also a space for them to be able to contribute as well. My also biggest peeve is when we're creating spaces for community engagement and those with the loudest voices are talking over community members and they're not able to contribute. So how are we creating a space for them to share and uplift their lived experiences as part of a space that's predominantly taken over by subject matter experts that feel like they know everything? The community has their lived experiences, and that is also wisdom that needs to be included as part of these efforts.
We did something in Singapore with the autistic community. So one of the permanent secretaries we worked with on the overall Singapore government AI project, which is for their residents and citizens, he was also the chair of this program, and it was for autistic speeches. And so they just asked us, they said, hey, could we start to record their voices so that they can be understood in Google Translate? And so we did. We actually set up a team, and we worked with them to make sure that there was equitable access, that the recording equipment could be used. They didn't have to come to a studio. Like we did that, and so happy to partner to make sure that we can hear all voices across the entire community.
Great question. Here, we'll go to the far side and then that'll probably be all we have time for.
Thank you. Hi, Deborah Shepherd with the Southway Workforce Investment Board. As the name says, we do everything that's workforce related, and everything that we go after, which is all grant funded, is always to be targeted towards underrepresented communities that are in that divide. So my question is twofold. One, from an education standpoint, let's just take LA County for now. In LA County, what can we do to empower teachers who are very concerned? I've gone to seminars, they're very concerned about what is AI going to do to their students in the terms of, will they learn how to write? Will they learn how to read? Will they lose any sense of critical thinking that they may or may not have gained? And how do we get the parents to support all this? So it's kind of a double-edged sword there, because I agree with you about the parents. And then secondly, are we making progress with employers at this point when it comes to skill-based hiring, which is really what you were talking about when you say removing the bias of a degree? How do you, as AI folks, see AI helping or really getting out to employers to look at this in a broader sense?
Who wants to take the education one first? Rebecca, is that more on your side?
I can talk to the education piece.
I've got one.
If you like,
Go for
yeah.
it. Go for it, Amanda.
So under public sector, we cover education. And for the past year, I have been dealing with panicked professors, whether it's my own faculty, right? Thinking that they're gonna lose their jobs and they're already not getting paid enough, right? So they're like, my 20 grand a year is going away. And we're like, oh, collectively, what are we gonna do? I think generative AI is finally pushing the pedagogical approach we use to the education system. We finally have to change it. It is antiquated. Multiple choice questions do not gauge the knowledge or level of understanding or critical thinking that is present in the human brain. And sorry, right? Like ACTs, SATs, they're going to, right? Europe doesn't even care. They're like, what is this? Why are you guys paying $200, right? So The one thing that I would challenge here, there was a great MIT article written by a high schooler who talked about how he used a chat GPT in this case to help him draft an essay, and he noted some very glaring errors in the essay based on what he